broadhead stuck him right in the side of the head. And I never will forget watching him run off with that arrow sticking straight out of the side of his head.
I saw antlers, was one of those, oh my God, that's a huge deer.
There'd be tools lying around, and my wife would be walking around piles of sawdust.
I couldn't shoot because I couldn't shoot through that massive shoulder. This is a 10.5 foot, 1,500 pound brown bear.
Get recalibrated, be immersed in nature.
I went and cut a persimmon tree, and I made my first probably 24 bows out of persimmon.
That's how we dominated our fights, because we never got off the horse. We just kept shooting and battling.
As men, we have something in our DNA that seeks adventure.
I like nothing more than teaching this to other people, bringing people in from all walks of life and showing them this ancient art of bow making.
I've been bit by alligators and charged by bears, and I've been involved in plane crashes and boat flips.
I fell hard on my ass, and yeah, I chuckled about it. That really sucked. It was also a wake-up call.
My mother looked at me, she said, "Where'd you get that bow and arrows?" And I said, "I swapped my bicycle for it."
You don't go to Alaska because it's going to be super easy. You don't pick up a traditional bow because it's going to be easy. You do it for the challenge and the journey of overcoming difficult things.
He started forward, and as that leg came forward, I drew and released, and the bear was so big that the entire 30-inch arrow vanished inside his chest.
Welcome to the Bowyer's Podcast, where we explore the ancient art of bow making, traditional archery, and the age-old pursuit of wild game. Together, we'll chat with masters of their craft to uncover the deeper why behind reviving the old ways in a modern world.
I just wanted to say that so far, all the times that I hunted, even the ones that I didn't shoot an animal, I had an amazing time.
Do you hear that sound? That beautiful melody is over a dozen well-trained hounds running through the mountains in Arizona as they chase a big old bear up a tree. In October of 2026, I'm going to be once again joining my friends at P&D Hunts to chase bears with my stick bow and a pack of dogs. If this sounds like an adventure to you, go ahead and email me at thebowyercollective@gmail.com, and I'll happily share the details to include pricing and logistics. P&D Hunts has offered to knock off over $1,200 off the outfitting fee for up to 5 hunters who'd like to join us. What I really like to do is set up an annual Bowyer Podcast hunt camp where we chase critters, eat well, and share stories around the campfire. If this sounds like a fun time, go ahead and hit me up and we'll get you on the list.
Good morning and happy whatever day of the week it is. I'm here with a good pal of mine, and for the last, year and a half, we've talked about having each other on the pods, and instead we just talk and BS and never actually put a microphone out here. So I'm really excited about it. It's 2026. It's the new year. We talk about new beginnings and refreshing and clean starts and all that stuff. And I myself have even been thinking about this a little bit. And I think that New Year's resolutions can be a little silly, and most of them don't pan out. But whatever it is you do and you pick, I just challenge you to be deliberate in whatever you're doing. And I'm trying to manifest that own kind of mindset in my brain. Be deliberate. The things that I've chosen or reflected on being better at this year, be very deliberate. That way your heart's into it and it's not some superficial thing. But anyways, that's my nitty gritty and my touchy-feely message for this morning. I'm caffeinated. I'm ready to have good conversation. Before we move forward, this episode is brought to you by Bastion Head Woodworks. Tracy and his wife, Katrina, are pals of mine. They operate out of Kansas City, Kansas, which is near and dear to me because I grew up just on the other side of the border on the Missouri side of Kansas City. But look, all of my tools, all my woodworking tools come out of Bastion Head. Tracy was introduced to me through Corey Hawk, who's been my Bowyer mentor for the last several years. And I get all my draw knives out of Tracy, out of Bastion Head Woodworks from Tracy. And they're handmade. They're awesome. He even has several varieties of lineups, right? On the lower end, I think around $100. They've got the budget Bowyer draw knife all the way up to some that are like $230, the higher end ones. But I just love the tools that I get from them, from woodworking to Bowyer tools. And if you're going to give your hard-earned cash to a small business and you're happening to work with your hands, check out Bastion Head Woodworks. All right, moving on. Mr. Zachary Hansen. Zach, how's it going, dude?
Great, man. I'm like you. I'm caffeinated. I'm ready to start the new year. I needed that touchy-feely message to get me motivated for the morning. So that was actually perfect and reflects what I need to be focusing on. So I'm all good and I'm happy to be here.
Good, dude. Man, I'm so excited to see your face and see you smile and see your super masculine, manly mustache this morning. Man, it's early in your neck of the woods. Was it like 6:30?
6:30, that's not early. I know you know this about me. You and I have known each other for a few years, but I've got 3 kids, 4 and under. So, 6 a.m. might as well be 10 p.m. for me. Like, it doesn't matter. Time is a flat circle in our household.
It's getting weird around my household where my youngest, who's not that young anymore, man, he's 10 years old. He still gets up around 6 or 6:30 every morning. It doesn't matter. Weekend, holiday, just whatever. He's always been an early riser. But my eldest, who's 12 and change, man, like Christmas break was like, he had some days that I was going to wake him up at 10:30 in the morning. I was like, hey, buddy, like the day is half over. It is. We're doing that. What I am super impressed with, man, I'm like, what are you, he's like, oh, I was up late. And I'm like, we don't have like screens in bedrooms. They aren't allowed to like have screen time without us. They only get very dedicated like time for games, and it's usually on the weekends, and they earn it through like their chores and stuff throughout the week. So I know he's not like up talking to a girl, or which I'd be okay with over playing video games or something like that. But it's nothing like that. I'm just like, where are you doing? I was reading the Spy Kids book. There's some series that he's into right now. And he's like been staying up late with his little light on reading this series of books. I think we already have to go to the library and pick up volume 3. But I'm like, okay, I got to be impressed with the fact that that's why you're staying up late. But also it's darn near lunchtime, so get out of bed.
Yeah, I think that's the ultimate flex as a parent. My kids are younger than yours, but we don't even have a TV in our house, so it's proctored screen time. Our kids know they don't get screens every day, and it's books. We read books at night, and my boy, who's our middle child, he's almost 4, this kid could read books all night. And I read something somewhere, probably was a Reddit thread, but it was about a parent who they gave their kid this rebellious streak, quote unquote, because they knew they had a flashlight in their bed, and after bedtime the kid would pull the flashlight out and read books. And the kid thought he was being like secretive about it, but of course the kids probably the parents had a camera in their room, so they saw what was happening. They let it happen, and the dad would I wonder when he's going to start to figure out like who's replacing those batteries. Those batteries are never out. So it's a good spark to have, and we do the same with our kids. Half the time I have to go peel a book off my son's face after he fell asleep with a little nightlight on. And I think that's awesome.
Man, I love it. Like, it sounds like we're on the right track with raising our small humans. So let's both keep it up and keep each other honest. Man, so we've known each other for a few years, and I think we were introduced through a mutual friend of ours, Shane, who you guys were both attending the graduate program at Hopkins, right?
Yep.
And then we got linked up through LinkedIn, and we both worked in a technology-based occupation nowadays, and yours is more on what the AI and ML stuff. Mine's in like the aerospace side of the world. So we're tied up on LinkedIn. And then I think we became more in conversation after I read your book, Turning Feral. And what I'd like to start this conversation off is to give a little like Zach Hansen 101, but also highlight the fact that Turning Feral provides that in great detail. And it's a fascinating journey of like adult onset outdoors. So I'm going to close my mouth, and you can give us a little bit about your background and how it came up to being a city slicker in the tech world. You became this guy that's well immersed in the outdoors. You're raising your wife, and you're partnered with your wife and raising your kids in the outdoors, doing a lot of traditional things that are counter to today's society.
Yeah. And just before I dive into that little 101, it's funny because like we were connected through Shane, but then I think it might have been connected through LinkedIn by Shane. But if you look at your LinkedIn, you wouldn't see what I'm looking at right now with your bows and your draw knives and skulls. Similarly, like you wouldn't see me with beaver pelts, traps, the bow you built me, more skulled bear wolf, all that. Gone. But that's not the real Matthew that's on LinkedIn. That's not the real Zach that's on LinkedIn. But when we connected and knew we had that underlying connection, it was great. Then we were like, oh, we're human. That's a little bit of an aside because I think that's what a lot of people are interacting with in the real world now, which is really troublesome when there are other people out there of interest. But anyways, digressing. Yeah, you gave a great synopsis. I grew up semi-urban, rural in like Georgia, South Carolina. I was always surrounded by hunting peripherally. There were the kids at my high school who would show up late in November and I wouldn't know why, or on my wrestling team. And they're like, yeah, I was out in a tree stand. I'm like, you are a moron. You can go to the grocery store and get a really nice marbled steak and probably tastes better than venison because my mom's dad did a little hunting. My mom thought she hated venison. So I grew up with that notion. So I was around it, but I didn't grow up in a hunting family. I just didn't. And went through high school, went to college, did a little bit of work with the Department of State overseas, lived like a very urban life, like big cities overseas, Vienna, Moscow, all these different places. Had the dream of owning a Ferrari. Like I wanted all the material things that were being pushed on me as a 90s kid to say, what is the status of success? So I go down that long path and ultimately I feel like a dog who catches up to the parked car that he's chasing. And I had that success. I had a good career in technology. I was married at the time. My wife at the time, she was an FBI special agent. I was working in tech. We had a huge house. We had the nice cars. We had no kids, dual income. Like we could do whatever we wanted. And literally, and it's the opening chapter to Turning Feral, I remember being on a weekly, this was my weekly trip. I was flying from where we lived in New Orleans or close to New Orleans to DC. And I remember on my laptop, somebody suggested I watch Jeremiah Johnson, go figure. So I was watching that on the flight, and I remember flying into Reagan, landing, and kind of looking out west, out the window, and just thinking, what the f am I doing with my life? I was doing the same thing week over week. There was no satisfaction in my job. I realized that if the grid fell, this is all pre-COVID, if the grid fell down, if I was forced to help my family survive, we would die because I don't know how to hunt. I don't know how to process meat. I don't know how to do anything for myself. I don't even know how to change the oil in my car. I rely on so many other people to make my life as fancy and easy as it was. And it made my stomach turn. And that was the starting point of everything.
Man, I love that. Like you had this deep awakening. And I think we all have, especially as men, like there's some sort of epiphany that happens that makes us have a detour or makes us consider a detour, but not everybody is bold enough to take action with that kind of internal dialogue you're having with yourself. That is one, having the comforts and the niceties and the security, and the other part that is, it's in my dunna to be able to have some skill sets and to know that I could protect and thrive and survive and all these other things, right? That we've been torn apart from, almost extirpated from through society. And it's like that devil and angel on your shoulder. And it's not fair to say that one is the devil, but it's like you've got these two kind of counters on your shoulder talking to you. And it's hard to be a moderate in that, I think. You made this big change, and I'm sure that it was not without challenges, right?
Yeah, it wasn't. So in the book, like you get the foreshadowing of that experience. And then for the listeners who either haven't read it, like I went through a divorce not long after that kind of epiphany. And it was a blessing in a lot of ways. It wasn't easy at the time, but that allowed me to take a bigger jump. But that time between that kind of fateful plane ride I recount and the divorce was probably a year and a half. I think in the book, it makes it feel like it was like the next week, but it was a year and a half. So I went home, and this was 2017, maybe 2018. And it had to have been 2018. It was 2018. And this was like when the Cam Hanes, the John Dudleys of the world were becoming a little bit, I don't want to say mainstream, but like they were
picking
loud.
up traction. Yeah.
They were picking up traction, and I happened to be a listener. And I remember going home and telling my ex-wife, I was like, man, I'm going to learn how to shoot a bow. We lived in Louisiana at the time. And she was a bit of a stickler. Like, she's a great woman. I'm not going to badmouth her. She's a good person. but she was very tight with money. And she's like, you want to spend what on a bow and arrow? And I was like, yes. And she's like, you've never hunted in your life. And she came from a hunting family. So this was like almost more comical for her. She was like, yeah, no, I don't see it. I was like, well, what? Like, I could do it. She's like, and that year and a half is when I ended up going around her and getting a buddy who I knew had been a bow hunter his whole life. He ended up sending me his old single cam Matthews bow that ended up being like a 1.5 inch too short draw height axle to axle for me.
Yeah.
I had no idea. With some arrows, and he sent it to me. I ended up ordering like a silverback release from John Dudley just because that's who I was following, that's what I was listening to. And I built a range in our backyard. And I am not the guy who's good at anything out of the gate. I am not the guy who you hand something to and it's like, yep, you're good. Like, I am the guy who has to build the spreadsheet and be like, okay, I figure if I do this 10,000 times, I might be okay. And that was the path. So
that's me too. It's not 10,000 hours to mastery. It's 10,000 hours to being like pretty okay.
Yeah. I don't believe in that Malcolm Gladwell thing, because maybe it's because you and I are a little bit more knuckle draggery. I don't know terminology, but like, it takes me a long time to get decent at anything and then get better. But long story short, there was a long path, right? It wasn't just an instant like jump in full feet to the fire. It feels that way in the book, and it was to an extent in hindsight, because a year and a half's nothing in space and time. But I went down that path and I was like, I'm going to do this. And I started to learn how to shoot a bow because that's what I wanted to do.
I love it. And fast forwarding here, like, you were able to go through some trials and tribulations. And I know, obviously, I only know this because I've read the book, but like, you went through your trials and tribulations, you really stuck to it. And then you write a dadgum book about your journey, right?
Yep.
Which is turning feral. Again, so obviously I've read this. I read it several years ago, but I think we've got a lot of folks, and again, it's men and women, but definitely men, where they weren't raised in a hunting family. And I even myself, like, I've taken a lot of guys that are like, are curious about the hunting and things of that nature, right? But they feel like the barrier to entry is too great, right?
Yep.
They don't know how to shoot. They don't know firearm safety. Or how to pick out a bow and not being taken advantage of, or how to be an outdoorsman without some people haven't even been on hikes before, but they have this innate desire deep down in them to get outside more often and eventually harvest wild game or climb the next mountain or whatever it is. And you chronicled your journey so well. And I think just reading and understanding that journey helps folks with that mindset or that curiosity or drive. It helps lower the barrier to entry, because they're like, okay, this is a pathway that somebody that was not raised in a hunting, fishing, trapping type of upbringing, and they took this leap. And again, it wasn't overnight. It was through a series of milestones, but it chronicles that journey. So, and again, I don't want to give away too much of it, but just fast forwarding to that, you went through this, you've got your spot in the middle of nowhere, Idaho, and you highlighted so well of the struggles that are involved in taking on something new, but also of leaning on your community. And I say this a lot, right? Like, society sucks, but we have the opportunity to shape and support our community, our friends, and our family. And there's no changing society, but man, there's a lot of ripple effects and small ripples to big ripples you can make. And your community was pretty special to you during that time that you were taking on a new journey. Can you highlight that a little bit or give us a few layers, Zach?
First off, where you started with that, as far as being a good example of the milestones and almost like what's the old saying, like, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? Like, that is what you have to do. And it does, like, my journey was probably like anybody else's. If I can do it, anybody can do it. That, like, we talked about being knuckle draggers. Like, if you can get to the point where you're at with building bows, anybody can. No offense. If I can get to where I'm
little
at,
taken. Just kidding.
Yeah, you got to eat your crayons. But if I can get to where I'm at, which is no expert, but proficient, anybody can. And I think, like you said, just having a little bit of blueprint, because there is in the hunting space, it deterred me a little bit at first because I was like, I think most people think, oh, I'll just go hunt. But then you get into the state regulation. You're like, oh, I have to go do a 2-day in-person thing, and I've never touched a firearm. And then people will be, I'll do it the next time around. And then you never end up doing it. So there's a lot there that people can just get educated about to help break it down. But the story does a good job of just being like, hey, anybody can do it. But to your point, like when so to bring it back full story or circle, I started getting into hunting a little bit after that little fateful plane ride. My ex-wife was laughing at me, stuck with it, did it anyways, went through an unexpected divorce. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go all in on this sucker. To your point, I went out to the middle of nowhere, Idaho, bought a cabin in the most remote town, had no idea what I was doing. And to be frank, at the time that I moved out there, I had a real screw the world attitude. I was coming through a divorce. I just wanted to be a mountain man. I wanted to live out there. I didn't want to talk to anybody. But God has different plans for people, especially people that are in that like mental phase of that was what I wanted to do. I thought I was going to be a man in a cave, thought my beard was going to go down to my belly button, and I was just going to be a hunter trapper, F the world. Of course, that's not how it worked. And the end of the book, the whole third part of the book is called community. Because what I realized is if you go out to a place like that and you have zero skills, which I possessed zero skills, you get humbled extremely fast. I was living in a place of 35 people year round where it's often landslid in, snow slid in, there is community electricity. There's all these things that require upkeep, maintenance, and some level of know-how to keep yourself in some form of comfort that I had come to expect from other people. And now all of a sudden I'm in a position where I'm the one who has to do it. I've never done arc welding before to fix a trailer that's broken. I've never opened up my electrical panel when I blow a circuit. I've never changed the oil on a side-by-side or anything like that. And you know, the funniest story in the book to me is like when I first got my house, got the keys turned over, I had a wood burning stove for heat. Who knew you had to keep the flue open and that fires needed oxygen to stay lit? And I spent like the whole first night jackhammering on the floor, freezing in negative 10-degree temperatures.
Oh man.
Because I didn't know how to keep a fire lit.
Yeah.
And it's the community that like slowly opened up to me and vice versa that built that up, helped me build those reps, helped me when I needed it the most, that really brought me back to understanding that community is everything. Family and those ties are what get you through and help you build the skill sets you need to survive outside of the mainstream.
I love it, man. I think it's really great. And you really did. You picked up those skills, particularly not just being handy around the house and having a place where you could comfortably live and dwell and thrive, but you picked up this little trade called trapping. So tell us about, your endeavors of trapping and brevity, but more so on what you're doing now and how that evolved into the Okayest Trapper.
Oh yeah. So it was when I went out there, I was full on. I was coming off my first bow deer hunt when I went through my divorce and moved out to Idaho. So I had taken one big game animal in Tennessee with my little compound bow before moving out there. So when I moved out there, it was elk, antelope, bear, everything with a bow. That's what I wanted to hunt with varying levels of success. But I was doing like the full Cam Hanes approach, right? Like I'm doing push-ups in my driveway. I'm shooting my bow 1,000 times, not literally, a lot every day. And the community's seeing this. And there's one restaurant bar in town. And I remember just going down there, saddling up, talking to these old timers. And Bob Lee, a guy who's no longer with us, he's 6'7", big guy. He's in his like late 60s. He just looks at me. He's like, why are you doing all those push-ups? And I'm like, hey, I want to be fit. And I'm like, I want to be able to go wherever the elk are, blah, blah, blah. I give him some BS answer. That's great. But is that going to make you a better hunter? And I'm like, sure. I have some argument about it. He's like, why aren't you out in the woods right now? I'm like, there's no season. And he's not true. I'm like, what do you mean not true? And you could be out trapping. I'm like, what do you mean trapping with those footholds with the teeth on them that go like this that I saw in cartoons? Because mind you, I had no idea about trapping at this point. And he's like, wrong. And he's come over to my cabin, blah, blah, blah. And he like shows me all these pictures of him with critters, bobcats, fox, wolf, all these things, badgers, He's like, if you want to get good at hunting, it's not going to be the push-ups. That'll help. He's like, if you want to be a better hunter, you need to be hunting year round. And Idaho is a great state where we have trapping year round for certain critters. He's take these footholds, foxes in season, go do it. And the book chronicles the whole story, but that was it. Like, it was a means to get better at hunting at the time. And then eventually it really just took over everything because I was doing it year round and I just fell in love with it. Because if anybody who listens to my podcast, which you foreshadowed, which is the Okayest Trapper podcast, trapping to me, probably similar to how, traditional bow making is for you, there is no better time machine than those traditional endeavors.
Sure.
There is nothing better than to grab a bow or the bow you built me or a trap, get in the river, and all of a sudden you're alone and you're back in 1860 or 1830, whatever time frame you want to hit. And it's the coolest thing in the world.
I love it, man. And it's just so cool. And that's, to my chagrin, it's something that I haven't really picked up. Like, I think when I was a teenager, I used to live trap coons, and at the local VFW that my granddad went to, they had a coon club, and they would give me like $5 or $7 if I would trap a live coon and give to them, and then they'd use it to train their dogs. But other than that, man, that's the extent of my trapping, unless you want to talk about catching bait for catfishing. That's about the extent, right? That being said, it's something I do definitely want to, and I know that the investment up front is not huge, right? So financially, I think that just as hunting close with a stick bow makes you a much better hunter for using other weapons too, because you're so much more patient, you're paying more attention to sign, you're more aware of wind. Definitely, gosh, the patience is so much better because it's hard. I think trapping must have that same turnover, right? Like, you're looking at really fine details and patterns that will in turn make you a much better hunter, whether that's archery or rifle, primitive weapons, or what have you.
Yeah. And all the guests that I've had on my podcast, like, I've had just folks that have, whether it's Jim Shockey or whomever, insert big name hunter, almost all of them have dabbled in or actively are trappers. And I would say, I never had anybody not say that trapping makes you a better hunter. And I can attest to that. I'm still a crappy hunter, but like, it's made me a less crappy hunter, because like, when you're trapping, you're extending your hunting season, because they often extend beyond traditional hunting seasons in most states. But the level that you're having to get on your hands and knees and understand pattern, find animal toilets, like, you're in the woods, like, just saying, okay, here's how this critter went. And you're trying to set, let me put it this way. The biggest epiphany for me with trapping, like, even when I started, like I said, I thought it was like you indiscriminately put this metal foothold or conibear or trap out in the woods. You hope to catch a critter. That's the furthest thing from the truth. A, they're ethical and safe these days. And B, if you think about it, if you're putting a 6-inch by 6-inch square little trap out in the woods of even 1 acre, let alone like where I'm trapping, which is thousands of acres, and you have, what I have learned, are really smart animals who are way often smarter than I am, to step on that is almost an impossible task. Like, it's crazy how hard it is physically and just mentally. And that's where it takes that like fine grain of, you got to find their little foot tracks. Where are they coming in and out? Egress. You put it there. Oh no, they're smarter than me. They smelled it. You didn't do scent control. Or they went around it and they have another path out and they had enough of a spook to go around it. Then you get into baits and lures and all these different things. And it's an amazing process, but it's way complicated. But it does make you more in tune with how critters move and what may or may not affect them to go off of their normal routes and habits that they do in the woods.
Were there any books or literature that you really dove into that you found particularly helpful?
Not at first. I have this book that I really like. There's two things. If I were saying for somebody who's getting into trapping, the National Trappers Association Trapping Handbook, right? That's 101 stuff like, hey, safety, common traps, common animal patterns. But the book that I've like really beat the brush on, which I think would be great for hunting or trapping, is Tracking in the Art of Seeing. which is by Paul Resendez. This is a great book. It covers every critter. It covers their feces. It covers their tracks and patterns, their food sources, all the way down to what their paws and prints look like when they're matted with snow versus in a dry climate. It's really good. That was what I dove into after I got over the hump of just jumping off the ledge.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's super cool. So, man of many talents, you then dove into another pet project that was not exclusive from the outdoors, but it involves traditions, craftsmanship, and the trades. And I think it's very relevant. Man, I had Josh Smith from Montana Knife Company on a few weeks back, maybe a month ago. And one of the things we talked about is the next generation of millionaires are going to be tradesmen and women.
Yep.
And I think that's true, which makes me think I need to go back to a vocational school and pick up a craft. But the Trade Gap, which was your latest book. So can you give us some insight onto where was this epiphany for you to focus on that as your next project, and what were your key findings out of it?
Oh man, Josh is coming on the Okayest Trapper soon, so that's going to be a fun conversation.
Awesome.
So I'll go back and listen to that one with you and him. But so this is not tangential to trapping. This is a trapping related epiphany. So you mentioned at the beginning, you and I both kind of work in a technologies field. You're in aerospace, I'm in artificial intelligence. I've always worked in that. So even when I went off grid, I was still working remote, occasionally hop on a plane. But in this timeline, the story between like when I moved to Idaho to when this story I'm about to talk happens, like six years or so, I meet my current wife. We start having kids. We're still living out in the middle of nowhere. And I thought my job was safe. AI, it's going to be there forever, or seemingly going to be there for at least like the next decade or whatever. I thought I lived in this little dome of security. That's not true. So I went through a layoff in May of 2023. And I had been proud enough that I had the white fence manifest destiny, where it's like, oh, I've got 6 months of savings. I will certainly find a job in that time frame. I wasn't worried at all. Then 4 months goes by after I lost my job, and there was not a lot of nibbles. And then 5 months, and then 6 months, and then it's okay. That's not good.
Yeah.
Then we hit the 7 month, and now we're digging into savings. 8 months goes by. Now we're thinking about liquidating some assets, like our car or like my wife's car, things like that. Month 9 goes by. I'm like, this is really not good. I don't have anything to fall back on. That was like the biggest thing for me, was like that realization that I don't have anything to fall back on. I don't have a skill. But then I was like, oh no, I do have a skill. I can trap. And I know we probably talked in this time, but I went like gangbusters. Like, I got a contract with Association of Fish and Wildlife, and I was live trapping marten for the AFWA. I was doing some work for Idaho Fish and Game trapping critters. And then I was just trapping a lot of these market trappers as much as I could fur to sell at fur sales. And I was trapping beaver, wolf, the whole 9 yards, leveraging the Foundation for Wildlife Management reimbursement for wolf trapping. Like, and the thing is, between that and some taxidermy I was doing as an apprentice at a taxidermy shop, I was able to get us by for the next several months and pay our mortgages with trapping, which was a skill I had acquired over the 6 or 7 years that I've been doing this turning barrel thing. And I was so thankful for that. That trapping saved us from having to sell our houses, move back in with my parents back in South Carolina, or whatever the case would have been. And I'm so thankful for it.
Man, in today's modern age, the fact that you were able to pay bills for an amount of time through trapping is super surprising.
It's super surprising. It was a little bit of luck in the timing, because it was like the time that I hit that point where I was like, I need to do something, was going right into the winter. And our trapping season, like for getting as much fur as you can that's legal, right? Like it's really November to March.
Okay.
That's the window I hit it in, which was just absolutely just God to allow us to do that. Now, coming on that back end, the irony is like that started November to March, and that trapping supported us for those months. I got the next job in April. That was back in the kind of tech world that was bringing us back up to the same income level we were at before. So like completely a God thing that provided us that timing of it, but it floated us. Like that is what got us by. And it made me reflect on what would have happened if I didn't have a skill or a trade. And I went down this long path. Like I am not going to be caught with my pants down again. So I went to night school here in Idaho and got a welding certificate for just basic arc welding. So I could go do structural welding if I needed to. I've been in my electrical journeyman's classes. Like it's going to take me probably 8 years to do that compared to a normal 3 or 4. But I'm getting my journeyman's license and I'm working some nights and weekends working with a local electrician, just learning some stuff and doing it all part-time, which is what I want people to encourage. Like you can learn skills that will give you a means if the rug's pulled out from whatever, or AI takes your job or you're replaced. And that's what people are saying. But that was the impetus for the trade gap, was a personal experience where I had I not had that skill, I would have been up Schitt's Creek. And unfortunately, I've had 2 acquaintances that I've worked with in the past, colleagues, who also lost their jobs in varying times over the past 5 years that I know of, that ended up putting a gun in their mouth because they had nothing to fall back on and thought they would never get a job again. And they had kids and family. And that's what brought me to write the book. Like I want people to know there's opportunities out there and that there's ways to build skills, even if you grew up just like me, not knowing anything, not knowing how to change your oil, hunting at the grocery store. Like you can learn stuff and it can make you money and it can get you by in a tough time or make you a lot of money if you want to go all in on it.
Yeah. What was some of your largest findings from that, Zach, that as far as not being raised with a craft or a trade, is it folks befriending guys with good skills and trying to apprentice with them off the books type of thing? Is it going to a trade school, night school? What did you find has been the most helpful path for people to take to get into something like that?
I don't think there is. What I have found is you've got to have curiosity. If you're not a curious person, you're not going to do these things, period. You're going to sit there and you're going to wait for stuff. So if I were to tell anybody, whether it's trades or any interest, build a set of curiosity, like just a curious mind. Like when you're walking around your house, like it is amazing. If you were living in a modern house today and you go turn your faucet on that people do every single day, how freaking cool is that? You pull a knob and you have fresh water. Like most places it's potable and drinkable. Like how cool is that? You flush your toilet. Where does that go? You turn on your light switch. You have wires all through these walls that are sheetrocked in. Like, how does that work? Like, you don't have to become an electrician, a plumber, or whatever. But like having a curious mind to look and maybe learn a little bit about it will get you down that path. And then something will strike your fancy around wanting to learn more. And if you're curious, you're going to find the person, or you might know your wife's best friend's husband's nephew's an electrician. And if you're curious, you're going to go and maybe, hey, let me message that guy and be like, hey, like, well, how does this work?
Yeah.
Can I come with you on a job? That's what I've done. Like the first time I went to electricity, I go to a actual call, a guy from my jiu-jitsu gym has been an electrician his whole life. And I said, hey, can I just come shadow you for a weekend? This was before I even got into classes. He's like, yeah, come on. And I did. And it was awesome. And I loved it. And it just kept pushing that curiosity muscle, or made me flex it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same with hunting. If you are curious, you're going to find a way and find a person. So I say curiosity above all.
Yeah, it seems like the first path of that foundation, like what you said, is build your set of curiosities, and then you can have little feeders going off of that to explore, and maybe don't dive into one single thing at first, is to like maybe be curious, dabble in some things, and then dive into a pathway that seems more like the best fit, which I really like.
Yeah.
That. What did you discover through your research and things of that nature? Are you finding that specific trades are like most in demand or most lucrative or have a brighter future?
Yeah, this is the catch-22, and you and I were talking a little bit before the show started. It's easy to glamorize the trades right now. Like you and Josh clearly were talking about it. Like there is a path. Like people understand that folks are aging out right now of the traditional HVAC, electric, welding, and we don't have enough people replacing them. Like that's a known fact. We don't have a pipeline of young kids going to fill these trades, which by its very nature, you think, okay, that's going to be a great thing to go into because there's demand. The biggest thing that I got out of my research for the book when talking to tradesmen, tradeswomen is yes, totally true. But the way that the trades are set up is it's not the same as being a W-2 worker like you and I are. You don't join a company and you necessarily have relatively good healthcare benefits. You don't get like a 401k. There's not necessarily a path to say, how can I do this myself, or ownership and an entrepreneurial mindset. So it's answering your question in kind of a roundabout way, but I think the answer is no. There's not all these things are in demand. There's not one that's more in demand than the other. Like everything's needed, especially as we're building data centers, our infrastructure's failing. Go down any trade and probably have a job. Now, can you go in and easily make a lot of money? Probably not, because in order to make a lot of money, you need to be on a path to ownership. And a lot of these trade schools or apprenticeships aren't teaching you the business skills. They're not teaching you necessarily what is EBITDA, like how do you build a good business? What is great customer service? And that's been a little bit gate kept. It's just like hunting, right? There's a lot of gatekeeping that goes on. So we got to figure out how to break down that barrier, get people better insurance, get people a path to building the lifestyle that they want. And that's not apparent, and that is not obvious when you go into any trade. That takes a curious mind, and those who have a real curious mind are the ones who can navigate that and learn those other soft skills on the side. Those are the ones who really become great in their craft. Like same with Josh, like he had to learn business skills. Now he's got a brand new huge building, hiring more employees. Like I guarantee you, as a lineman, he didn't learn those skills. He had to learn those on his own out of curiosity.
Right.
He was building like his knife business.
That's great. And I think as my boys are getting close to their teenage years, I do talk to them about that, where look, there's the four-year degree option. I used to think about the military option, but I don't know. I have a lot of distrust in Uncle Sam these days. And it's not just this administration. It's just that maybe as I become a more informed adult.
Yeah.
But I'll support more than one, but also trades, because when I try to encourage them to, like you said, is to be curious and to think about what they would be okay doing every day. They don't have to love it. Like I think I'm reading this or listening to this book right now called The Good Enough Job by Simone Stolzoff. But it talks about, we were raised, you got to love your job. You got to find your passion. If you love your job, you never work a day, blah, blah, blah. But then it's like, well, then you never really separate from your work.
Yeah.
Then it becomes your work. So what happens if you lose your work or if something changes or if I need family? And I'm like, oh man, yeah, I want to, just as you, some of these journeys have experienced a lot of these things, right? Or your identity, like when somebody meets you, they're like, what do you do? Not like nothing else is all also tied to your career. So I'm like, what would you do every day that is going to be good enough? It's going to pay bills, but also afford you what's the most like scarce resource? In my mind, that's time.
Yep.
And I try to coach my kids right now about time, because I did the corporate ladder thing and worked in more an executive role. And at this point, it's going to be hard to make a big change. We have a certain quality of life or what have you, but I want my kids to be more informed as they reach that workforce age and know that a trade is also a great option, where especially if they are driven and curious and have enough critical thinking to think of it as either one, it can just be their craft, right? Their trade that they're doing. They're going to be a brilliant technician at whatever that is, or there could be that path to ownership or managing big projects or whatever, like a foreman or a superintendent or what have you in the future. So I think all those things are there. And I think those are important conversations for people to have, because everybody's, oh, my kid's going to be a doctor or a lawyer or what have you. And it's, that's cute. One, that's like $300,000 of student debt.
Yep.
And two, are most of them really going to do that? Or are they going to go into it for a couple of years, change their major 5 or 6 times, and still not really know what they want to do? I think it's all irrelevant in conversation for us as dads as we think about futures. But also, if we all talk about this, right, man, if I could work and not have anything to do with the government, I would, but I don't really know. And I'm like, oh, maybe there's plan sort of B's in the future. I also just think it's important. We talk about traditions so much on this here radio show, and it's rejuvenating kind of age-old practices in a modern world. And progress is fine, and everybody has their own definition, but having some skills that are these hard skills that you talk about in really both of the books and on the Okayest Trapper podcast, it's all relevant. And I think anybody that's keeping up with the world, it should resonate with them. Maybe less time with screens and ones and zeros, and a little bit more time bumping your knuckles on things that agitate you, holding the flashlight for your dad, and getting your feet wet and your hands a little dirty is probably going to do everybody a little bit of good.
I think that's the best summation of everything. Like, it is, be curious. Don't be afraid to touch the things that you own and figure out how they work. It's like the kid taking the alarm clock apart. Obviously, don't disassemble your water heater if you want to have hot water. Maybe you can, and maybe you put it back together. It works great. So just the curiosity bone, bump your knuckles. There's nothing we can't learn. Everybody before us built everything we see around ourselves. You go down your city street, be amazed. People just like you built that. And you can learn it.
It's pretty impressive.
Or at least understand it. So we're a very impressive species, period. We have just been somehow satiated, pacified, and reliant. And if you have a curiosity, you can slowly start to pick back some of those skills. You're never probably going to be an expert, or if you're just built like me, you're never going to be an expert anyway. So you might as well start trying and go after it.
I love it. Man, as we taper off to go to our real jobs, where can people find you?
Yeah, I have an Instagram. You probably know. I have tapered off of that. I've gotten clear space. I'm on it maybe 3 minutes a week.
That's
check
awesome.
things, post things. It's been great. I feel bad for listeners or people who reach out that I don't reply to. So if you are one of those people, now you know why. But I do have an Instagram. It's at Let Me Die Learning. Obviously, the books, you can check out Turning Feral or The Trade Gap, especially if you have kids or you're a parent of kids who might be going either to college or a trade school or trying to figure out what they want to do with their life. Highly recommend you reading that. It's got a lot of great resources and information. But yeah, that's it. Instagram there, LinkedIn, if you're of that ilk also. But that's about my only social presence at the moment.
And the Okayest Trapper podcast, which is basically anywhere you want to listen to podcasts.
Yeah, we've got a lot of great back episodes. We took a break over the holidays, so we're going to be getting back up in there. I'll be cross-posting this episode on the Okayest Trapper as well. But yeah, those are all the places.
All right, brother. As always, it's awesome catching up to you. And I can't wait to catch up probably with a microphone later in the year just to give a recap of 2026 and see what we have going, what type of hunts are being planned, and find out what's new in the world.
Love you, brother. Good luck, and we'll chat soon.
Big love, man.